Hello to everyone and welcome to today's virtual event, which is the final part of our three-part series for software-defined access with Catalyst Center. My name is Tanner Swift and I'll be your host for today's session. I'm excited to introduce some incredible speakers for you today, but before I hand the mic over to our presenters, we do have a few housekeeping items to cover about this presentation. Today's virtual event will be recorded and made available on demand after the live session, and the playback will also be available on YouTube for rewatch as well. We will provide you with some further details at the end of today's event. Also, we'd love to hear from you during today's presentation. During the session, if you have any questions for our presenters, you can submit them via the audience Q&A section on Slido, where we will answer your questions live or during the Q&A portion of today's event. You'll see some QR codes sprinkled throughout today's session where you can participate, so be on the lookout for those. If you do have some questions, there will also be a survey near the end of today's session for you to answer via Slido as well. So without further ado, we're excited to discuss some various methods for making sure your SDA network is operating at an optimal performance. I'd like to welcome our first speaker for you today, and we'll kick things off by sending it over to Kavita. Kavita, right over to you.
Thank you, Tanner. Hello and welcome everyone to today's session, which is monitoring and troubleshooting SDA Access Fabric. So today I have with me my colleague Julio Guerrero, and we both are solution architect in Cisco CX systems. So we are going to be doing the session today. I would be the presenter and Julio would be doing a demo on Catalyst Center towards the end of the session. Before we jump into today's agenda and we talk about these things that we would be sharing today, I want to take a couple of minutes quickly to address why we have actually put this session together. So this session is apt for you if you're looking to learn different troubleshooting methods and different tools that are available for SD access troubleshooting. And also, if you want to learn what are some of the most common issues that one faces when they're implementing segmentation in their network environment. So we are hoping that by the end of this session, you will get a better understanding of the issues that we encounter while we are working with SD Access. And apart from that, you'll also learn the causes and the issues by their behavior. So for today's agenda, we're going to start off with first understanding the flow of traffic in an SD Access Fabric. Then we'll talk about some troubleshooting methods, that will cover some troubleshooting commands. And we'll also cover some troubleshooting tools that are available to us. And then move on to some of the common issues that we usually see with the segmentation use case. And of course, that will be followed by a live demo on Catalyst Center that Julio would be doing for us to see how we can monitor the SDA Access Fabric right from Catalyst Center UI itself. So understanding the traffic flow in SD Access Fabric. So before we actually talk about that, let's take a quick look at the components of SD Access Fabric. So what is an SD Access Fabric made up of? So just a quick recap of that. So in SDA Fabric, we have edge nodes where our users get connected. Then we have border nodes, which provides connectivity outside the fabric. Then we have a fusion router, which provides connectivity to the shared services like Catalyst Center, DHCP, ICE, and it also provides connectivity to the internet or to any other remote sites. Then we have a control plane node, which is like a mapping database that keeps a track of all of our endpoints in the fabric. And that also maintains a table which keeps the EID to RLOC mapping, meaning which endpoint is connected to which edge switch. So it keeps all that mapping as well. So these are majorly the main components of an SDA fabric. Just a quick recap for that. And let's talk about the different levels of segmentation as well that are supported in SDA Fabric, because we will also be covering some segmentation troubleshooting as well. So Catalyst Center supports two concepts of segmentation: macro and micro segmentation. Macro segmentation in Catalyst Center refers to creating virtual networks, which is something very similar to VRFs in traditional network. So it is really the separation of the control plane, just like two different VRFs in traditional networks. And by default, the interfaces that are assigned in one VRF are not visible to the other VRF. So thereby no communication exists between them by default. And since they are completely part of two different virtual networks, they are part of completely different routing domains. Now, the other concept of segmentation that Catalyst Center supports is microsegmentation, which refers to creating SGTs, or what we call as security group tags. And that works exactly like how a VLAN ACL works, with VACL or VLAN ACL works within a VLAN. So it actually means to filter the traffic within a subnet or within a routing domain, but with no complexity, unlike what we normally see in traditional networks. Because here, the filtering happens on the basis of the security group tags, and it does not happen on the basis of any kind of IP addressing, because that security group tags filtering that we do in microsegmentation makes it very easy for us to deploy the policies. And we can have security group tags sharing the same subnet or VLAN, and still we can achieve that, another level of segmentation, and that's what we refer to as micro segmentation in SD access. So traffic flow within same VN and within different VN. So before we actually begin to troubleshoot, it is very important to understand the flow of traffic in an SDA fabric and how these segmentation policies are really applied. So here you can see we have two kinds of traffic flow on the slide. The first one is represented by the red dotted lines, is the traffic flow between two different virtual networks where the traffic is going outside the fabric and then it's coming back in through the Fusion router. And the SGT information in this case is preserved via SXP protocol. I won't be going too much into SXP details here, but just to give an overview, basically, in case of routing between two different virtual networks, as soon as traffic leaves the border to Fusion, border router removes the SGT tag and forwards the traffic as plain IP traffic. So in order to preserve the security group tag, we use SXP protocol between ICE and border. So this is one kind of traffic flow. The second flow is the traffic flow between same virtual networks, where both source and destination is part of the same virtual network. So traffic here does not need to go outside the fabric. In both the cases, once a user is authenticated, it will be assigned an SGT that we have already defined earlier in Catalyst Center. And ICE will then push these security group tags or SGTs and any security group access list to the edge switch as soon as the user onboards the network. So this is how typically you will see the flow of the traffic within an SDA fabric. Now, next thing we need to also understand when we are sitting to troubleshoot, once we know what is the flow of traffic within our fabric, we also need to understand the flow of traffic towards the shared services. So we need to know where our ICE server or any other AAA servers are located. Where is Catalyst Center sitting? Where is the DHCP or DNS server located? Also, if these services are accessible locally, or they're sitting in your data center, or they're across WAN, or they're sitting on cloud as a virtual machine. So you need to be well aware of where all these services are located. We also should know if all these different services are reachable through your global routing table or they are part of a separate VRF. Also, if there is any firewall between them, so accordingly you allow the traffic through the firewall as well. And since all these things are very specific to a network and how it is set up, so one needs to be very well aware of these things in particular before you actually start to troubleshoot an issue, or before you even call tag. You need to have like all this information, be well aware of all this information beforehand. Um, so next thing is I want to highlight here is the assignment of SGT and characteristics of the user session. So it's also really important to understand how SGTs are assigned to the endpoint, whether they are assigned statically or whether they are assigned dynamically. And if they're assigned statically, then why, and like how many VLANs are we talking? How many VLANs are there in scope? Similarly, how user is authenticated, whether the user is authenticating through .1x or MAB, or is it a wired connection or wireless connection or both? Also, where is username and password configured? Is it in the Active Directory or your ICE local database? And are we doing any device profiling as well? So we need to really have a clarity on all these things before we start to begin to troubleshoot any issue, or even before we call TAC for any kind of help. Now let's look at the troubleshooting methods that we have. So let's talk about macro segmentation troubleshooting first. Before that, let's spend a couple of minutes to understand how a virtual network works in SD Access and different virtual networks in SDA Fabric. So in SDA Fabric, the underlay connectivity is from the global routing table. So all your IGP routes are advertised in the global routing table. We have an infra VN where all the access points are attached and the connectivity to all the extended nodes is present in the global routing table. Then we have a default VN where all the SGTs are mapped by default. And if there is no virtual network specified for a particular security group tag, then it is assigned to this default network automatically. Then the last is the user defined VN. These are your basically your customized virtual networks that you can edit or that you can modify or create at any point in time. So these are the different these are the scenario for troubleshooting macro segmentation, that where is the underlay connectivity, where is infra VN, where are your access points and default VN and all that. So let's move on to troubleshooting micro segmentation. Before that, let's see how SGT works in SDA Access. So in SDA, the security policies are based on Cisco TrustSec solution, which assigns security group tags to enforce policies for users, to enforce policies for applications and for devices as well. And the VXLAN header, which is the data plane, carries the VRF and the SGT information. Now, the segmentation policies are enforced on egress direction and not in ingress direction, which means that when a port receives the traffic, the policies will not take any action. It will allow or deny only when the switch is ready to send the traffic out towards the destination. Once a user authenticates and gets an SGT tag, the policies that are associated with that SGT are downloaded from Cisco ICE. For example, you can see here on the slide that once the user 192.168.1.3 authenticates and it receives the IP address, then SGT 200, then the policies associated with that SGT 200 will be downloaded. As you can see, the table that this allows the traffic between SGT 200 and 300, and it's denying the traffic between SGT 200 and 301. And the same thing is depicted in the form of diagram as well. So this is how typically the SGT assignment or the policy assignment enforcement will take place. Now, this is a quick workflow that I wanted to highlight. The first step when we are troubleshooting inside the virtual network is that we need to see or validate the VN and SGT's association. The first step to check is the mapping of the SGT in virtual network. So in the Catalyst Center, you can see, and Julio would be showing that in the demo as well, how you can check which SGT is mapped to which virtual network. And from there, you can check if the SGT is being assigned to the right VN or not. So that is an important step as well. That is the most important step, I would say, to begin with. Then, because we have seen scenarios where segmentation policies are not working just because the SGTs are mapped to the wrong VN. So it's important to check whether it's mapped to the correct VN or not. And after that, the next thing that we can check is the IP pool assignment. So when we create a virtual network on Catalyst Center, we also reserve an IP pool for that virtual network from where all the IPs will be assigned to the user. So that is an important step to verify as well, if endpoints are getting the correct IP address and SGTs, or are they getting the IPs from any default policy. Because there could be an issue that a user got the IP from, let's say, some 10.10.00 subnet and an SGT of color green. However, the correct IP pool for that user should have been 172.16 subnet with some other SGT color, maybe yellow. So that is something that we need to begin when we are doing any kind of policy troubleshooting. So that is something we need to check in our SG environment. And um, another thing to understand here is that or I just want to make a point here that we are just creating the pool on Catalyst Center, but if we have an IPAM integration like Infoblocks, then that will take care of assigning IPs to the end user. We'll see the step in more detail in the demo. Then we have three more steps, like you can check the VRF routing table, then you can verify the TrustSec data on the edge switch. You can check if policy is downloaded on the edge switch or not. And let me actually go over the details for those. What are the different commands that you can use in order to check all these different steps? So as I mentioned, that the first step we would be seeing on Catalyst Center. So the second step is to validate the VRF routing table. So this route, the route to shared services that is in the VRF routing table, this route will have the reachability to ICE, DHCP, DNS, or any other common services from your end host perspective. The output that you're seeing here on the screen, it's from a border device where we are showing the routing table of campus VN VRF and highlighting the route to shared services that the border is learning through BGP via Fusion. So if a user is not getting SGTs or IPs, then they also need to check if they have a route to shared services correctly learned on their border device or not. And this is how you can check that. So it's an important step when you're troubleshooting. Next thing, in order to troubleshoot any issue related to these SGT assignment, is the TrustSec data. So that needs to be verified as well, and that needs to be verified on the edge switch. So to do so, we can use the command show CTS environment data, and that shows the initial data download from the ICE to the switch. So the output or the screenshot that you see here is an output of an edge switch. Here are the command CTS environment data that shows the policy data downloaded from ICE. And I've highlighted the groups that are known on ICE and the radius server that is used as well. So we will be sharing this deck later as well after the session, so that you can keep the deck handy whenever you're doing some kind of troubleshooting. The other thing to check is the CTS enforcement. So the classification maps an IP to an SGT, as I mentioned earlier. So this is accomplished dynamically where possible, and it's also done statically otherwise as well. All endpoints that are not assigned any SGT tag will belong to SGT 0. So the command shows CTS role-based SGT map. So this command will show the IP to SGT mapping on the switch. So these mappings could be learned locally, or they can be learned from external source like SXP that I showed initially in the diagram. Like here you can see in this example 172.16.11.190, this got an SGT of 17, and the source is local, which means the switch itself. And 10.48.91.151 has a tag of 300 where the source is SXP. So this is another thing that we must check, and this is a very important command that you should have handy, and it is very oftenly used in SGT or SDA troubleshooting. So checking the CTS enforcement is like a very important step. Then the next bit is check CTS policies for endpoint. So show CTS role-based permission is a command that you can use to check TrustSec policies or SGA ACLs on the switch. Here, this command shows what policies are applied to SGT 17 for B10 developer. That's the example that the screenshot is showing. The second command is show CTS RBACL, shows the content of the policy itself. So for example, here the policy is permitting the ICMP and FTP traffic, and it's actually denying the rest. So, and this command is equivalent to the command show access list that we use in traditional environment or traditional network. But for an SDA, you can use show CTS role-based access list. So that's how we can check the CTS policies for endpoint. The other thing is monitoring SGA traffic. So the other command that could be used is show CTS role-based encounters, which shows the counters for hardware and software traffic between the SGTs that are captured by the switch. Here, we will focus on the hardware switch traffic between SGT 16 and SGT 17. In a working scenario, this hardware counter should increment. Traffic not hitting a more specific entry will hit star star. There are a few steps or commands that you can use while you're troubleshooting SGT or segmentation policies, but I've tried to put them in a logical order as much as I can, and the way you can follow it in your troubleshooting scenario, so that it gives you some kind of help. Now, these are some of the methods, and let's look at some of the troubleshooting tools. First thing we can do is we can check the logs in config. So logs from AAA server, DHCP server, they will provide us the details, like if the user is authenticated or not, if the client is able to reach DHCP server or not, and if the server has already issued IP address for that client or not. So those are the logs that you can collect. Then you can also get the logs from ICE that will tell you what SGT has been mapped for this IP or for a particular user, and what authorization policy is being applied for this user. And then lastly, we can check the SGACL on both ICE and Catalyst Center, and we can check if they both are matching or not, because that's an important bit as well. The other tool is checking the authentication profile. If the user has failed authentication as per the logs that we saw in the last slide, we can check authentication profile on Catalyst Center and verify what type of authentication profile is applied on the port level. There are few types of authentication profile, like closed authentication, which is most secure, and any traffic prior to authentication is dropped, including DHCP, DNS. And the second is open authentication, which is moderately secure. Then we have the low impact, where security is added by applying an ACL to the switch port to allow very limited network access prior to authentication. And then lastly, we have no authentication, which is the most insecure way of connecting. So after checking the logs, it's important that the next thing we can do is we can check we can check how the user is authenticating as well. Next thing to check here can be the session details. So, and that we can do by using the command show access session, which explains all the details of the session for a user. For example, in this slide, I don't know how clear it is, but the example actually says or shows the details of the session for a user who connected on gig 101 on edge 1, and it's showing the IP address, SGT VLAN, and if it is authenticated or not. Then it's also showing the username that it's used to authenticate, the device type, and see the what is the device type. It's Microsoft Workstation, and also the authentication method that is used here is it also shows that in the screenshot as well, that it's using the closed authentication. So checking the session details is another important thing as well. Then device tracking, show device tracking database is another useful command, which shows the endpoints that are learned by the edge switch. This command is equivalent to show IP-ARP that we have always used in traditional network. So just like show IP-ARP command resolves a MAC address for a given IP address, similarly, device tracking database, it maintains the MAC address to IP mapping for endpoints in SDA. So Catalyst Center enables the device tracking feature automatically to all device type to access. And thereafter, Catalyst Center pushes device tracking configuration to the devices. So we can check the device tracking details using this command as well. So these are some of the common commands, tools, or methods that one can use. Now, it's also important to understand what are some of the common issues that you can come across. So in an ST environment, the first issue that we see mostly is that policy is created, but it is not seen on the edge switch. So how do we troubleshoot that scenario, and what could be the potential causes and solution for the scenario? Now, the first step is to check if the ICE is reachable from devices and from Catalyst Center also. Sometimes what happens that there is a loss of connectivity in the shared VRF or some changes in the underlay routing table, which is causing the NAT to not to receive any policies at the runtime. So first thing, we are going to check that. Next thing that we must check and we must verify is if the network device is showing up in the ICE device list or not. If there is a change in certificate or any communication loss that may interrupt ICE to ICE relationship. So in a sense, that device basically should be able to ping ICE, but still ICE will not exchange the policy with the device. So we must check and verify if the network device is correctly showing up in the device list. Then another common issue that has been seen is that if PAC is present on the device, and PAC just means that the switch and ICE have authenticated each other. It's like a trust relationship, and that should not be empty as well. So that we need to check also. So if you're not able to see the policy on the edge switch, these are three things that you can begin checking. Then other common issue that we see is that user is not assigned the IP address. Here, the first step is to check if ICE is configured correctly or not. There are authentication authorization policies that must match the that must match the user or all the users for that group. You should also like keep an eye on the matching criteria and think about how the user will onboard the network. Like if the user is using .1x or no authentication, what SSID is he joining? It is wired, that which VLAN is he mapped to? And most commonly, this is where we tend to make mistakes. And if user does not match to any profile, the ICE takes default actions to like permit or deny via a default group. So that's a common issue that we see, and that's what we can check, the first thing. Another thing we can check is for the reachability of the DHCP server from the edge switch, and also verify that the DHCP scope also exists on the DHCP server. So from a user perspective, user will reach DHCP server from its dedicated VRF. So we need to make sure that VRF sees the shared services route from the border as well. Now, in SDA, the fabric routes are distributed to shared services by border routers. So this is how the return traffic will be successful. So these are some of the common failure points why user might not be getting an IP address. Other thing can be user is not assigned the SGTs or the correct SGT. Here we can validate how user is onboarding the network. Sometimes when the exact policy is not hit, then also the user might onboard is not hit. Then user might onboard by default policy and get like a different or an SGT that it's not supposed to get. So that is something that we should check as well if we have a failure type where user is not assigned the SGT. Lastly, you can always open a tag case, and it's highly recommended that you open a tag case if you're having any issues. These are some of the helpful links on how to open a tag case in case you're not aware. I'll post the link on the chat as well. So I think it's time for our demo now, and the some of the things that are covered in my presentation, my colleague Julio will be showing them on Catalyst Center, how you can do that. So with that, Tanner, I would like to pass it back to you.
Really appreciate it, Kavita. Thank you so much. We'll get back to you here in a little bit for some key points to remember. And before we get into our Q&A, as Kavita just mentioned, at this time, we'd love to bring in Julio Guerrero to walk us through a live demo. Julio, thanks for joining us. The show is now yours. Can you talk to us about today's demo?
Thank you. Yeah, we will be covering a little bit on the highlights that you can get on the Catalyst Center to monitor your SD Access Fabric, a little bit of interactions with the Cisco eyes, and how can you maintain a healthy network on your company. Thanks. Perfect. So welcome everyone, and let's get started. We will go over the demo on a Catalyst Center. Remember, this is a new name for our Cisco DNA Center. In this demo, we are running the current recommended version, that it's 2377. Latest release has been out as 2379, but this is one of the recommended ones that we have for now. Whenever you log into your Catalyst Center, you can see that you have your assurance summary. Whenever you can see the health of your network devices, your wireless clients, and your wired clients as well. You will have some dashlets that are very useful for you to track the health of your network, such as the critical issues, some trends and insights, and a little bit of a network snapshot. How many sites have you been created on your fabrics, how much network devices you have, the network profiles that you are using, for example, for wireless, images that you have for software update, licensing, and so on, right? If we start taking a look on the network devices from the assurance part of the Catalyst Center, you can see that you will have a way to monitor the devices that are part of your fabric in 3 hours, 24 hours, 7 days, or 30 days back on the timeline. So you will see all the events and the health of all the network devices that you can see down here. We have network devices, 86% of health. We have divided depending on the platform that you have onboarded and provision on your Catalyst Center. They will fall into different categories, such as router, core, access, wireless LAN controller, and the access points. You will see that you can see that there are some issues being reported here, and they will be show on the health of these devices. You will see the access points that you have been getting up. Now, in this dashboard, you will see all the information about all the devices you have onboarded, not just the SD Access Fabric. We will go over the SD Access assurance part of it in a bit, so you can take a look. In here, you can also see all the network devices, manageability for them, device name, the version, IP address, and the overall health for them. If you see the KPIs that we're using to give this a score for device health are based on memory utilization, CPU utilization, some link errors, the fabric health as well. Depending on the type of device, you will see the information. Let's take a look on these access points that was having not a really good health today. It was because we had some noise, as you can see, and the channel utilization interface was not the best, right? So this is a very good way to start looking at some issues that you may encounter on your fabric. All these devices, you can always go through them and go directly into the device 360 to go a little bit further on what is going on with them, right? Same way to monitor the assurance in them on the device 360, you will have a 7-day or go back in time to verify what has been happening here, right? You can see if you go over this timeline, what was the device health for it. If there has been any issue, you can see changes on the health, and you can try to track down what happened at that certain time of your network. At least this device has been getting a really good health. You can see the fabric side connectivity will show here, and so on. So if we go a little bit down, you will get the model, management IP, all the information for this fabric site where it belongs, the transit that it's using, the virtual networks that have been deployed on this specific border device. You can take a look in them as here. And we will go a little bit further on how do you track this and how they are mapped with the SGTs. But in here, you can take a quick look on how does the virtual networks has been assigned to this specific device. If we go a little bit down, you will see also the fabric role, type of device, the support, and software version. Reachability is very important. Whenever you track these devices, they should be reachable to be part of the fabric. And you can see the issues being reported on each device, right? I can take a quick example here. We had some issue reported as a switch unreachable for one of my fabric devices. The assurance will take you to the issues and events for the devices you manage in your Catalyst Center. So you can see this border from this other fabric was unreachable. You can click there, and Catalyst Center will give you some guidance in order to troubleshoot a little bit of what can be happening on this issue, and you can take back your devices, right? You can try to verify if the last hop is reachable, verify the physical ports, verify access to the device. Depending on the type of issue that is being reported by Catalyst Center, you can get some more further guidance into resolving these issues. Now, let's go back to our previous Catalyst Center. In the device 360, you will also find the physical network topology. Whenever you can see your border node control plane, that is the one that we have on this view right now, and where it's connected, right? We have a couple of other devices on top. We can see a little bit more details when we go to the fabric view of this device. You will also see the event viewer to track down what events have been happening, some BGP changes. This is a border that's connecting to our Fusion to get us connected to the shared services and some other devices such as Cisco Eyes, the Catalyst Center, and so on. You can also do path trace to verify connectivity between 2 points. And here you will find device information, such as CPU, reachability, memory utilization, and so on. There are a few other tabs that you can see here, such as a fabric site. If it belongs to a fabric site, you will see more information related to the fabric for the specific device that you have in your network. Let me go back quickly, and then we will go again to the health assurance. And we will track down a little bit on the SD access. For the SD access, as you can see, you also will have the SD access fabric related issues. It will be showing you with how many fabric sites, how many virtual networks you have, the transit that you're using, and if there is any issue specific to the SD access. You can go down a little bit and you will see the fabric sites that you have, layer 3 virtual networks, and the transits. Let's try to click on this RTP fabric. You can see the fabric site connectivity looks good. Overall, fabric site health is also good. If you start getting some problems, this is a way to start looking at what is happening on your SD access fabric. Now, let's wait a second for it to load. It will give me also the timeline of events and how was the health for this specific fabric site. You will see that network segmentation protocol, we're using Lisp pop soft. And there are going to be all the devices that are being connected here. You will check the KPIs for these devices and the health that they are having. Let's click on one of those. So we can see for the devices we have, they have control plane reachability, so they can exchange all the information for the endpoints, get all the policies from eyes and so on. You will see the control plane reachability. It will be happening from here, extended node connectivity, and some BGP sessions. You will get a lot of more information on this view for the fabric site health. For the devices, this is all the devices that are part of this specific site in RDP. Also, we can find some issues, at least for today, we don't have any. And the information for all the devices similar. You will see the fabric connectivity. We have two borders, one border, two edges, our wireless LAN controller that are part of this fabric. Again, anytime you want to check something in one of your devices, Scavita show a couple of commands that you can run on these devices. Catalyst Center offers you this command runner, and we can use the IP route brf campus VN to take a look on this border IP routing, right? Remember, we will be, oh, it's a BRF, sorry for a typo. Doing a live demo. So you can get information directly from Catalyst Center via CLI to your devices that are part of this inventory and that are also part of the fabric. You can see we're receiving a default route from BGP. We're advertising some other networks, so we can have fully connectivity for our fabric and also to share services. Now, if we go now, this is part of the assurance dashboard. We can go to issues and events. In here, you will have a list always of all the issues you can get, either for all your network devices or SD Access Fabric devices. You can always take a look on what is going on. As we show on the previous device that was not reachable, we'll give you guidance. And this is the main issue list for all the devices, not just SD Access, okay? So if you start having some problems, you can troubleshoot and start taking a look on the issues from here. Now, if we go a little bit on what Kavita was showing today as well, we can start on the group-based access control. But before we go there, remember, we need to have ICE integration so we can start exchanging these SGT groups and so on. If you go to the System 360, you will find that we already have onboarded and synchronized our ICE to the Catalyst Center. There's a primary and a PX read. We have it connected. You can see that our green checks here. Whenever you want to update or change that, remember you will need only can have one ICE. You can add only one, and there are some settings that you need to configure in there whenever you are setting this up at the first time before creating your fabric. Right? You will set up your IP address for ICE, admin password, the fully qualified domain name. Remember, we need to make sure that on your ICE you have enabled a couple of settings. Let's go to our Cisco ICE here. Let's go administration. Under deployment, you will find information for this Cisco ICE that will be helpful for you to integrate with your Catalyst Center. We can find a fully qualified domain name, IP address, and remember, you need to enable down here the PX read in order to exchange information between ICE and Catalyst Center for all the security groups. Now, if we go back here, we already have checked that ICE is up and running. We have been changed the policies, and we can take a look on the group-based access control option on Catalyst Center. On the overview, you will see that from the migration that has been complete, we're getting the security groups from Cisco ICE. After integration is done, everything will be managed by Catalyst Center, right? So you can create some security groups, you can create policies, access contracts that will be pushed to your Cisco ICE. But before to that, you having done a couple of other settings in order to receive correct information for your users, your SGTs, and these application policies that we'll be getting. If we start from the security groups, you can see that we have a set of security groups. This is where we do the mapping for them. Just an example, we have the employees SGT that I will show you. One of our devices has been onboarded on the wireless and has been getting this SGT4. It's part of the campus VM. So here's where you do assign these virtual networks, right? You have created a security group, has been imported into Catalyst Center. After the sync is done with ICE, you will be able to create some more that will push from Catalyst Center to ICE. And then you can assign the virtual networks, right? So you can check the mapping starting from here. And then you can create policies in between these different security groups. Remember, for the microsegmentations you do on SD Access, that you can permit or deny traffic in between the groups. Very easy with these policies, right? There is a kind of matrix view for all your security groups. Let's go for employees. If I want to set a new policy between employees and contractors, I can just click here. It will ask me if I want to enable the policy, I want to disable that if it's already enabled, or just want to monitor that. And then I can change contract. These are my contracts that I have in here, but let's take a step back and let me go here, go to group-based access control. The access contracts are the type of permissions. See that as an access lead. We can create an access contract that will permit let's see, we can do permit HTTP, and just description. You can see the action is going to be either a permit or deny. You can select here the protocol that you will be permitting. It automatically sets for UDP and TCP the port number. You can log in or not. And after that, you can see the default action for this after this permit it's on. You can deny anything else, right? Or you can play around with this as an access list. After you create your access contracts, you can apply that to the policies as we saw. You select back, let's say, contractor employees. We can change contract. You can select allow web. This is one example of it, and change that. This will be pushed to your edge devices, so they will be aware of which users that come into specific SGTs have permission to talk with other SGTs within the same virtual network. Remember, this communication, it's inter virtual network between the SGTs. That's the microsegmentation that you have within one virtual network comes within this microsegmentation that you can play around with permissions for these groups in between. Now, if we take a look here on the Cisco eyes, we can see on the administration, we can check identities. I have set a couple of users that can be authorized here. Also, the groups that were created before here, the user identity groups, we have employee and contractors, for example. So you start working from here. And then you can also take a look on the policy. And the policy sets allow you, let me go here, policy sets, they will allow you to set which devices that fall into specific conditions, they will be assigned to specific security groups, right? In this example, we can see for contractors that are wired and go into my infra VN, that will assign this security group for contractors. Same for wireless, and then for employees, if they fall into this enterprise wireless, they will have an employee SGT. So the SGT, as you remember, we have seen that we received them from ICE. They are here. You can always check the mapping. So mapping should be for employees as a campus VN. That will be the virtual network where they reside, and we can monitor. Just an example. From there, we can go a little bit over into provision and take a look at the fabric itself. So the fabric sites will allow you to take a quick look on how does the fabric is conformed. You will have the fabric site, virtual networks, and transits. Let's go quickly to RTP fabric. There are two views. There is a topology view and the list view. You can see that these devices have been enabled already. You can remove them from fabric, and then you can also set up the layer 3 handoff for this border control. This is a border control, and you can see the fusion, my interfaces that I have in here, the layer 3 handoff that we're doing into the fusion, and so on. So for configuration, you can take a look in here. Also, you can check details about your devices, such as the platform, software you're running, and also the ICE integration you can review from here. So this is also a very good view to start taking a look. And also the compliance. If there is some devices that are not compliant into the SD fabric, you will see. We'll check for network settings, startup running config, the fabric itself, software image, critical security advisors, and so on, right? Some on-support configuration for SD access. So here's where you can track a little bit on your fabric. We also have set up some fabric zones in here where we can see we have an edge device also has been enabled for the fabric. You can see same details for it, if it's part of the ICE integration or not. We can see also the access points that belong to this and the port assignments that you can get for specific devices. You can see that I have added one of my access points into this port 101 and a Gigabit interface. And that's the way that you will be setting up. If you have some problems onboarding your access point, you need to make sure that you are using this infra VN, that it goes behind for all the communication for access points into the wireless LAN controller. If I go back quickly, we also had a wireless enabled controller for fabric being added in here. And you can track same kind of information. Make sure that everything is good. We have ICE integration, device is reachable. You have everything is looking good, right? So just to take a quick look on devices, I have been onboarded one wireless client in here. About the IP pools that you need to check in the beginning when you're designing your network, you can go to network settings. You can check the IP address pools. I have a site for RTP here where my pools are already assigned. You can see what I have: endpoint wireless 10.114.0. If I go back to my wireless device in here, I also have in getting this IP address. So it means after I authenticate with a user called Ed, I can get into the wireless network. And after that, I can also track them down through the all my Fabric users that I have in here. I can track them down through the assurance in the client tab. So user that I have created, it's Ed on the eyes. It has been authenticated. And then you can easily track your devices that are part of the Fabric and they're getting into the network with these assurance and client view for them. You will have a client 360 as well, whenever you can track what is the status of the device, has been the connection for it, and all the very, very deep details into this device. You can get it from here, like onboarding is good, it's getting a good connectivity, what is the connection details. In order to troubleshoot further, there are a lot of tools that you can get from here. So overall, this is a little bit of the way that you can start looking at some issues at your Fabric. Remember, assurance is a very good tool for you to start going further to review your policies, your group-based access control, ICE integration, and so on. So that will help you to maintain this SDA Access Fabric in good shape. So thank you. I'll take it back to Tanner. Thanks.
Really appreciate it, Julio. We'll touch base with you again here shortly for Q&A, as we'll kick it back to Kavita to discuss some key points to remember. Kavita, right back over to you.
Thank you, Tanner, and thank you, Julio. That was very, very informative. So that actually brings us to the end of the session, and I want to quickly wrap it up with some key points that we need to keep in mind whenever we are troubleshooting SDA. So important bit is that before we start troubleshooting, we need to understand what is the flow of the traffic in our SDA environment. Then how is the VN SGT mapping looking? Which SGT is assigned to which VN? What is the IP pool assignment? That's an important troubleshooting step as well that Julio just showed us in the demo. And also understanding how a user is onboarding in the network is a very critical point as well. And once we have all that information, then we can always call TAC. We can use some of the commands. We can do troubleshooting using Catalyst Center, how Julio just told us all the different steps and all the different dashboards that we can go to do the troubleshooting. We can run commands from Catalyst Center itself. So hopefully you start doing that in the environment and find that useful. So with that, it's time to take some questions.
Thanks so much, Kavita. We have reached our Q&A portion of today's event, so we'll go ahead and take some time for questions now. Just as a reminder to our attendees, if you have a question, you can use the Q&A section via Slido. You can use the QR code on your screen if you would like to participate. Let's get to our first question here, and Kavita or Julio, feel free to whoever wants to jump in and answer this one. What is the reason that the switch does not show all the SGACLs?
So in SDA Fabric, once the user authenticates and it gets an SGT, only then the relevant policies that are assigned with that SGT are downloaded to the switch. So that could be one of the reasons that it's not showing all the SGACL. So we need to check for that whenever we see an issue like that.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. What is the first thing to check if the user is not getting the correct SGT?
I can take that one. Yeah, you first need to check if the user has been authenticated on ICE successfully. Verify that the authorization policies are correct and they are putting that in the correct SGT, and also that the SGT mapping is good for the virtual network you want to work with.
Great. Thanks so much, Julio. Here is another question. Is having a SDA Fabric mandatory before beginning with network segmentation?
So we do not need to necessarily have a fabric in place. We can still get started with segmentation, creating our virtual networks, SGTs, and policies. The SGTs and policies will work as long as you have the trust sec configured. That's the important bit here. And then the virtual networks that you create using the, like if you already have trust sec configured, if you create the virtual networks, and those can be planned for to use later when you create your fabric.
Beautiful. Thanks so much, Kavita. Here is another one. How do you troubleshoot external traffic flow?
Well, you can go to your board device, try to review the VRF network for specific virtual networks that you are working with. Make sure that you have the correct routes to the shared services, and you are advertising properly the ones from the fabric into the shared service in the fusion as well. So.
Great, thank you. Let's get to another question here. Can we assign more than one SGT to a user or group?
No. So the answer is no. Only one SGT can be assigned to a particular user or a particular group.
Great, thank you. We are about up against time here. I do want to leave a moment here, Kavita. I'll kick it right back to you. Is there anything else that you would like to discuss with our attendees before we do wrap up here?
So that is all from my side today, and we hope that you found the session helpful and you can start with some troubleshooting commands. And we would be sharing the deck and the recording with you as well later. Over to you, Julio, if you have any ending statement.
Yeah. No, thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll be happy to answer any questions. We'll be providing some links so we can follow up with you guys. Thank you.
Great. Thank you all so much once again. Thank you to Julio, Kavita, as well as our panelist, Casey Hamilton, our producer, James McDonough, and the whole team for bringing your knowledge to the Cisco community today. If you do have an additional question, we'll keep that Q&A panel open on Slido for a couple more minutes and get to some responses for more questions that are coming through. We also ask that you please take a moment answering some questions on our post-event survey via Slido, as it helps prepare us for some future sessions. For even more tutorials, demonstrations, and future webinars, please visit the Cisco Learning Network. You can follow up with any future questions, view resources from today's session, as well as its recording through a post-webinar discussion thread on the Cisco Learning Network. Come on over there. Come talk to us. Ask any questions if you got us. Give us some feedback. We'd be excited to hear about it. Once again, we thank everybody for joining us today, and we will see you next time on the Cisco Learning Network.